All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really pivotal moment in American history known as the nullification crisis, specifically looking at it through the lens of the HeroesMart Academy curriculum. It's this incredibly intense historical standoff where the balance of power in the United States was pushed to the absolute brink. We're talking about sovereignty, the fragility of the federal union, and what happens when the laws of the land are directly challenged by the very people they're meant to govern. So I want you to start by asking yourself this kind of crazy hypothetical question. Can a state simply ignore the president? Just imagine a scenario today where a single state decides a federal law doesn't apply to them and they just flat out refuse to follow it. It sounds wild, right? Well, because this exact scenario almost tore the country apart in the 1830s, it's absolutely crucial that we understand exactly how it unfolded. Section 1. A divided nation. To understand how we got to the brink of war, we first have to look at how fiercely divided the United States was over money and taxes. The trouble really started brewing back in 1828. Congress passed this series of aggressively high federal tariffs, which are basically just taxes on imported goods. Now, the lawmakers in Washington probably thought this was just standard economic policy, but furious Southerners quickly nicknamed this new law the Tariff of Abominations. And honestly, when a law gets the word abomination attached to it, you know for sure a crisis is coming. If you're wondering why South Carolina opposed these tariffs so fiercely, it boils down to a stark regional divide. Northern industry directly benefited from high tariffs because it protected their manufactured goods from foreign competition. But on the flip side, Southern planters were deeply hurt by those exact same tariffs. Their whole economy relied on trading agricultural products and buying manufactured goods from Europe, which suddenly became incredibly expensive. So what helped the North actively hurt the South. Section 2. What is nullification? Feeling financially crushed, South Carolina decided to fight back. And to do that, they used a highly controversial legal theory. This definition is literally the center of the whole crisis. Nullification is the radical belief that a state can reject federal laws it believes are unconstitutional and declare them null and void within its borders. Basically, it's the idea that a single state can just cancel a national law it doesn't happen to like. What's truly fascinating here is how quickly this idea became a political weapon. Driven by Vice President John C. Calhoun's political theory, South Carolina actually took this extreme step. They didn't just complain about it, they formally declared the 1828 tariffs null and void. By doing this, they were directly challenging the supreme power of the federal government. They drew a massive line in the sand. Section 3. President Jackson strikes back. But South Carolina made one fatal miscalculation here. They were dealing with President Andrew Jackson, a man who was famously stubborn and absolutely not going to let a state defy the federal union on his watch. Jackson fiercely defended federal authority. He did not mince words, calling nullification a threat to the union. He wasn't just stressed about tax collection, he was warning everyone that this kind of rebellion could lead directly to disunion and utterly destroy the country. To Jackson, this was plain and simple treason. Let's just look at how incredibly fast this whole thing escalated into a near-war scenario. Step 1. South Carolina rejects the federal tariffs. Step 2. President Jackson responds by threatening actual military force. He literally threatened to march the army down there. And Step 3. Congress had to frantically scramble to fix it, working on a compromise tariff to lower the rates while also giving the president some backup. To solidify his response, Jackson got Congress to pass a very aggressive piece of legislation called the Force Bill. This was a law that allowed the president to actively use the military to enforce federal tariffs. He made sure he had the absolute legal authority to use troops to make South Carolina pay up if it really came down to it. Section 4. Foreshadowing the Civil War. Ultimately, Congress did pass a compromise. That compromise lowered the controversial taxes, and South Carolina backed down from their nullification stance. So yes, the confrontation ended peacefully in 1832. There was no bloodshed, but the deeper conflict remained totally unresolved. They narrowly avoided a violent war, but the highly dangerous question of state sovereignty versus federal power was just kicked down the road. So, why does all this matter for us? Well, it was a glaring, blinking warning sign. It showed the terrifying danger of unresolved state and federal clashes. It revealed how stark economic and regional differences could easily threaten national unity. The profound disagreements over who held ultimate authority completely foreshadowed the devastating future conflict that would eventually boil over into the American Civil War just a few decades later. Section 5. Morality, Education, and Peace. When we look back at the chaos caused by rebellion and bad choices during this crisis, it brings us to a much deeper truth, presented in our source material about how we handle authority in our own lives today. The HeroesMart Academy curriculum connects this historical event to a broader philosophy, highlighting this scripture from 1 Peter. Submit yourselves for the Lord's sake to every human authority. The lesson points out that unlike the leaders of South Carolina, who chose defiance and pushed their nation to the edge of war, the scriptures guide us to respect and submit to the authorities placed over us for the sake of order and peace. As the Godly Learners series teaches in this curriculum, what is the actual point of being highly educated if you lack the morality to avoid making destructive, rebellious choices? The brilliant politicians of the 1830s were incredibly smart, but being smart doesn't automatically stop people from making bad choices that hurt entire nations. Submitting to legitimate authority brings order, whereas constant defiance, it just breeds conflict. I want to leave you with this final thought, drawn straight from the source text. Romans chapter 8 promises peace of mind to everyone who keeps their mind spiritual. True peace doesn't come from fighting every rule and stoking division like South Carolina did back in 1832. It comes from keeping a spiritual mind that seeks harmony, wisdom, and understanding. So, as you look at the deep divisions in our world today, ask yourself, are we using our education to build peace, or are we simply finding smarter ways to repeat the dangerous rebellions of the past?